Yeah.
You're happy here, aren't you? I'll go and see you.
Happiness I'm going to start to.
Hey, have any trouble? We've got one of our nothing friends here with a little camera. There we go. Okay, down onto there. Drag it to you a little bit.
Oh, yes.
Right, now then. That's where you pull. Can we get that? This is where you might need the pull cord. Oh, it's going to go through, isn't it? Sorry?
Just a bit.
Inside.
The turning noises and things, I'm happy, you know.
Fighting with this.
Stuff on the floor.
Need a rough.
Rubbish.
There'll be a lot here. And it's okay.
And it's all brainwash, so you understand. Yeah.
It stays in there.
Yeah, and just remember it.
There we are.
Super.
Okay, lovely, thank you.
Yeah, you'll get away with that.
Really like those.
Colin, tell me first about your life making rub. How did it begin?
Oh, crikey, my life actually started, well, I suppose really, I always tell everybody when I go to these different functions and give talks that my interest in knot tying probably started before I was born, daft as it may seem. My father started in the rope trade in '39, and he saw a man sitting in the corner of a warehouse, playing with a bit of rope, as he thought. He was joining a piece of rope. And he thought curiosity got the better of him. I wonder what he's doing. And he walked over to have a look, see what he was doing in the corner of the room. And this guy immediately, as soon as he spotted him coming over, got up, threw the rope on the floor and walked away. The secret society. Now, I think we all know the secret society that exists even today in Canal fender making, rope fender making. Well, his curiosity was passed on to me. When I came along towards the end of the war, there was a lot of home splicing, homework to do. And I was always told that I was plonked in the middle of the kitchen table, all this homework strewn about, and suddenly he turned around and said, "Hey, he's sitting in the middle of that table doing nothing." And at 2-year-old, I was told I could tie knots. I was tying wall knots and things like that. So really, my knot tying started at a very, very early age. When I eventually became of age to start work, at 59, I started with the same company that my father was working for, and that was the Wright's Ropes of Birmingham. I started there as a rope splicer, junior rope splicer, and believe it or not, I was actually splicing the mooring ropes for the Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth. So you can see I cut my teeth on big ropes right from the very start.
So they were all made up in Birmingham, not the names like Bridport Grundy and that have become famous for providing ship rope.
That's right. Birmingham, Wright's Ropes of Birmingham were famous for quite a lot of the large shipping ropes. In fact, they have the reputation in the Guinness Book of Records for the largest fibre rope, which was made 1856 for the launch of the Great Eastern. And that was a 47-inch circumference rope. Quite large. Quite a big piece of rope. I'll say amongst that, pieces of rope that were made going through the history, should I say it, rather a morbid story, the Hangman's rope. The Hangman's rope was actually made by Wright's Ropes of Birmingham. Believe it or not, I've only just found out in the last, 12 months that we were making 300 a year hangman's nooses. Majority of them were exported, fortunately, to the Kenya uprising. And we all know what that was about. Rather morbid.
And originally, the machinery you're using here, which I don't know whether it's just for celebration, but once it would have been a rope walk, wouldn't it?
Yes, the story behind this particular machinery was obviously being interested in the subject. I've done a lot of research and searching around different museums to find possible machinery. And I eventually found out that at Stoke Bruin there was a ropery, a rope walk across the back of the museum. And further digging, I was allowed to go into their storeroom. And guess what? I didn't find one, but I found 3 machines. In rather poor state at the beginning, but as you can see, this one I've managed to rebuild and get it in working order. So hopefully to bring to the other people and general public to show exactly how rope used to be made around the turn of the century. So yes, that machine is actually from an old rope walk at Stoke Bruin.
Because they would have walked much longer distances than obviously you can walk in a place like this. Yeah.
would probably been up to about 300 feet maximum. On the hand-making machines like that, 300 feet was been approximately the maximum. When you're talking about the rope walks, and these are the old machine-operated rope walks, they were up to a quarter of a mile long, because they made what they termed a standard coil of 720 feet, allowing for shortening and everything. When you're twisting, it does shorten quite a lot. So, yeah, they were actually made theirs a quarter of a mile long.
Could you explain to me now what you have thus done as it starts and right up to the final length of rope?
Right, well, what we've actually started off with is a 6-yarn strand. We're trying to build up that 6-yarn strand into a more suitable rope, a larger diameter rope, obviously giving us a bigger breaking strain. To do that, we have to run the 6-yarn strand down the walk and put some twist into it. Now, when we've put sufficient twist, that is put onto one side, and we have to do that for 7 strands, 7 of those, to build up a main strand for rope. I know it's a little bit difficult to grasp, but then we use what we call a register plate, which unfortunately isn't about, a register plate with 7 holes, 1 hole in the centre, 6 holes round the outside. Walking back down the walk with that plate, it starts to wrap itself around the centre yarn. You probably see the centre yarn was dropping away. When that's dropping away, that's because it's straight in the inside, and all the 6 are shrouding round the outside of that, wrapping themselves round. That builds up a uniform strand to work with on the actual rope. Majority of strands on ropes are made in this pattern. You can go obviously to different sizes. Some of the ropes go up to 19 yarns, even bigger than that. Once you've got to that stage, then we will put those 3 strands onto the back onto the hooks, spin those up and close those off with a top and make it into the final rope, as everyone would know today, a 3-stranded hawser-laid rope.
Now tell me why you were using tape, but once you would most definitely have used knots, wouldn't you? Yeah.
You would have used knots. Obviously, modern technology, tape is a little quicker, time is a little more precious, unfortunately. But saying that, using that particular machinery, you can produce one of the better ropes.
What knot would you have used, by the way?
Normally you'd use something like a bowline on the end. A bowline would have been tied in the end of the rope. But we are obviously restricted for space, and if we tied a bowline in, we'd lose half the rope. So we have to cut corners, unfortunately.
And now why, using that kind of machinery, would you make a better kind of rope?
It's made by hand, and it's made by the operator's eye. It's purely feel. If you've got a machine doing it, the machine is set up by an operator, it's mechanically made, it's mechanically spun right from the start to the finish. There is no adjustment halfway. When you're doing it by hand, I know exactly when to hold back, I know exactly when I need a little bit more twisting so I can slow up, I can speed up, I can do what I like. I'm in control when I'm closing that rope. So,
you just don't make ropes for rope's sake, you can make nets and all kinds of things.
oh yes, you can make all sorts of, in the past I've made all sorts of nets, and safety nets, scrambling nets, cargo nets, you name it.
Trawls?
No, that is a different kettle of fish. That is something where you obviously go into a machine product, and that is machine made.
Now you worked on safety nets that were used on the post office tower, didn't you?
Yeah, the post office tower in London. That was a contract that we had when they were building the post office tower, and it was a safety net which, excuse me for trying to remember the measurements, but they were approximately 20 feet by about 12 feet wide, 10 to 12 feet wide. They had rings all round them, and they were slid onto scaffold tubing. And the idea was that they built a frame gantry around the tower when they were building. And this, obviously, machine, it was driven and it went up with the tower as they were constructing. And it just travelled up the tower as they were going up.
And anybody who missed their footing would have been held.
They would have been held in that net. Yeah.
No problem, there's no way of them going through it.
Oh no, definitely not.
Do
Touch wood, we never lost one.
Do you remember if it was you? What did they actually have to get people out? People did fall in it.
Oh, people had fallen in them. Oh yes, we'd heard of situations where people had fallen in, but as I say, there was never any problems of serious injury from them. Not the best of things to fall in, but at least it breaks. It's better than falling a couple of 100 foot down a tower. So yeah.
And is there, without talking about money, but is there a good living, just the two of you working together, hand-making rope still today?
Well, of course, we don't actually make a living at it. It's just purely and simply a hobby. We've both got full-time jobs. We're here today purely to demonstrate to the public and to demonstrate to people the Guild of Knot Tiers, which is another part of the hobby that we have. We're interested in all types of knot tying. Obviously, with my past history, all I'm doing is trying to pass on a lot of knowledge that I've got stored up top in the hopes that people can keep a dying art alive. It's not going to go with me, I hope.
You pass it on, you hope?
I hope I'll pass it on to other people. A lot of things have been passed on to people, so...
You've mentioned all the time the Guild of Knot Tiers. Can you tell me just something about them and their work?
Guild of Knot Tiers, they're an international Guild of Knot Tiers. They were formed some 6 years ago, by a band of people in the London area, and the main reasons were to keep the art of knot tying alive. I think we all remember, 8 to 10 years ago, a rope fender on the Canal was hardly ever seen.
A rubber tie?
Exactly. Oh, well, that's the traditional fender. That's another subject, actually, a sore subject, traditional. But it was formed basically to try and keep this art, the dying art, alive. And we've got now something like 600 members throughout the world. You name it, Australia, America, Holland, even in the Falklands. There are members everywhere. And they're all after the same aim, to keep the art alive.
Because it is something that canal boatmen everywhere, and boatwomen, should know about and be cognizant with, isn't it?
Oh yes, quite. This is what I try to say. I do a teacher training course, a teacher course, where I try to teach the people rope fenders making and rope work. And in this I always say to them, the first question is, what is a fender? The fender is there, first and foremost, I know the BW would kick me for saying this, it's to protect their property, their boat. They've put a lot of money in investing in that boat, so obviously they want to protect it. Secondly, it's there to protect the BW's property, the locks, quay signs, jetties, things like that. So it's got a very, very good reason for rope work in that respect. Plus, obviously, tying the boat up. And it pays, if they know how to tie the boat up correctly, then it's going to save a lot of problems when they're cruising about.
Thank you very much indeed. Good stuff. Somebody else.
By the time you get there. You'll be seeing this.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I guess we will. I'll film that.
We're about and that's how rope gets made.